It's 5:02, and go ahead and get this meeting, special meeting for Tuesday, August 6th of 2024. Marty, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Alvaro Arreola,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem James Giroux,
Here.
Councilman J.P. Sanchez, Councilwoman Ernestina Martinez,
Present.
Councilman Jesus Lopez Jr.,
Present.
Councilman Randy Quinones, Councilwoman Carmen Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor, you do have a quorum. The next item is going to be executive session. It is executive session on matters covered by section 551.074 parentheses 1 of chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, deliberation regarding appointment and or employment of a new city manager, Blaine Oburn.
It's 5:03, and this council will go into executive session.
I was drenched.
Executive session and there's no action taken.
Can't make a motion or second.
It's 5:56. We adjourn this meeting.
Really?
It's 6 p.m. We'll go ahead and start this workshop special meeting for Tuesday, August 6th of 2024. Mari, could we have roll call, please?
Mayor Alvaro Arriola,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem James DeRuse,
Here.
Councilman J.P. Sanchez,
Here.
Councilwoman Ernestina Martinez,
Present.
Councilman Jesus Lopez Jr.,
Present.
Councilman Randy Quinones, Councilwoman Carmen Gutierrez.
Here.
Mayor, you do have a quorum.
By the way, I do want to make a comment. Councilman Quinones is not here because he's going to have his wife and himself. We're going to have the first child, so he's not here. So congratulations to him. Hopefully, he brings us a cigar if it's a boy and a bottle of tequila. So we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we all stand and the Pledge allegiance to the Texas flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
We are on item number 4, other business. 4A is presentation of the proposed and revised organizational chart for fiscal year 2024 through 2025.
Mr. Chavez, at this time, it's just a presentation, right?
Correct. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Did want to make a quick introduction and presentation on the organizational chart that I'm recommending for the fiscal year 2024-2025. This will go in hand with the proposed budget. During my time as interim, I had time to review the needs, the operations, and with the most current and recent issues that we're handling here within the Planning and Zoning Department, I felt that this particular recommendation that's being brought in front of y'all is what I'm expecting to, and again, this is my request for help within the organization. The one thing that I do want to mention is that when you want to look at the whole org chart, you want to make sure that the span of control is addressed so that no one department has more than what they can handle. For that particular reason, I did want to make a recommendation by adding, deleting a department and adding another one. The deletion would be the planning and zoning department, and adding operations and compliance department. With that, as mentioned, we want to make sure that we currently have issues that we want to address at planning and zoning, and we want to make sure that everything and everyone is on top of what needs to get done in that particular department. And in this particular case, as the previous org chart that was adopted in the last budget cycle, everything else would pretty much stay the same, except for the changes that I'm about to go over. First, did want to move the animal services under the police department. That is a recommendation based on looking at other cities similar to our size, and most animal services fall under the police department. Would also want to recommend moving the emergency operations under the fire department. We recently had it there, and we had moved it out a few years back, and I'm recommending that it goes back under the fire department. Let's see here. Again, establishing a new operations and compliance department. There, want to recommend that under this particular department, we do have parks and recreation, facility maintenance, civic facility events, the San Felipe Golf Course, the development services, planning and zoning, neighborhood services, and any other special projects management to be under this particular department. we do have a move, also moving our GIS division, which was currently under the Planning and Zoning Department, to now fall under the Public Works Department, which it was previously reporting to Public Works, but it had changed last year. Recommending that it goes back under Public Works. When you look at GIS, the majority of the work does fall under Public Works. So that would make more sense to be supervised under Public Works. And again, as I mentioned, this particular recommendation is based off of our budget that we'll be presenting here in a few minutes. But this is what I feel that that we need currently to be able to continue to operate. And as I mentioned, we do have some areas that we do need some more constant supervision, and I believe that this will get us to where we need to. I do acknowledge that at some point, once we do have a city manager that comes in, they could reevaluate that. But at the moment, I feel that this is where we need to be at so that we can move forward with the upcoming fiscal year.
I guess my question will be: is there any way that this could be delayed? We hire the city manager so we can proceed on his vision and what he's going to bring in and how he wants to do his organizational chart. Because I understand you've been living it for the last 6 months, but the other person that comes in is going to continue it or try to research what you're stating and see if it's the same decision that he's going to come in with.
Right. And under my opinion, they'll probably need some time to evaluate. And I'm trying to address the upcoming budget starting October 1st, and whatever the council wants to do there, that's fine. But this is my recommendation heading into October 1st, where I feel that, again, after evaluating for 6 months, this is where I feel that we need to be at.
I mean, I'm hoping that we get to our new city manager hopefully by the end of August, if God is willing. So I want to kind of delay this or postpone it till we have our city manager in place so he can review it. Budget preparations, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it, but we don't know if we already finalized our audit, and we're going to start discussion on budget right now. So I think for right now, we sit still for a little while. And this is, did you want actions to be done on this particular?
No, this is just a presentation.
So at this point, you just present it to us. You don't want to proceed on
Yes,
any action.
any feedback is welcome as well.
Well, I mean, I don't see anything other than having the new city manager review it, and if he goes for it and brings it back to us, I think the council has something to think.
Is it appropriate for me to make a comment?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh,
Ba-
yes, man. That's what we paid for.
I thought you paid me to keep quiet. One of the biggest challenges have been in the last few weeks have been under the development services and planning and zoning, and it's important to have some direction in that regard. In addition, the comment that Mr. Chavez made regarding animal services being under the police department has also, we've had some challenges with that as well. And I know that you're not going to act upon it today, but the operations and compliance department is kind of a high priority, I think, for the city based on everything, all the challenges that we faced in the last couple of weeks.
And I know that, but I think it will be for us as a council to present an organizational chart to the new city manager when he or her, whoever it is, to review it and understand it. So like this, he's going to inherit it. So it is a process, and I know you guys have been working out there on every thing that is critical. But I think once we make the decision, whoever is going to be our city manager will present it, and he or she wants to bring it back to us. And I mean, the discussion could proceed on that. But I understand, but I don't want to commit to it yet until we have that person that is going to sit on this position. And I
My
respect
only-
Mr. Chavez for really taking the lead and bringing this concerns, but
My only fear in this department is it may take too long because we do need some immediate action. And I know you're not going to act on it today, but just
well, I think if you look at it, it's still under the city manager, which is he is the acting city manager right now, so it's still under him. I don't. I mean, if you look at the charts, it's under city manager. It goes all the way up, and it says city manager in the center. So that is not a change. He can still be the person that's going to be governing that. Is this the position? This goes right.
yeah.
So at this time, I know that's my last and final comment. If any council wants to discuss in regards to that, then you're welcome to take the floor. The dais is all yours.
I mean, I feel the same way. Where you got to get a city manager that wants to put his administration and his experience to play. Now, the city charter has never been changed since 22, and has never been approved for the new city charter since 22. Now, these positions that are being implemented, well, I don't even know if they've been put out for advertisement for employment, hiring somebody that's interested also in taking the job. But as far as the issues and the problems that Ms. Honest Lawyers is saying, attorney, I mean, to me, I think like what I keep saying, department heads sometimes have to take responsibility too as well. I don't think we need somebody else above the assistant city manager to be telling these department heads how to do projects if they've been there several years experience and know how to handle stuff. I just think that we ought to wait, like you're saying, for the new city manager to come in, let him see the original city charter and not the one that's been implemented in these books that has not been approved.
Like I said, I don't have a problem with the organizational chart. Just want the person that is going to come in and sit on this to really digest it. If he wants to make a little change here and there, then tweet it and get it done, present it back to us. And Councilwoman Carmen Gutierrez, you have a comment?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank
Mr. Chavez?
Mr. Chavez and of course our attorney and all the staff that has been working on this organizational chart. I also agree that it would be prudent to wait until our new city manager is on board, where he or she can evaluate once they're in the position how the departments would be best be served in moving our community forward. As you mentioned, Mr. Chavez, in the last few months that you've been interim city manager, you recognize some challenges of the previous one that had not been updated since I understand 2022. So a couple of more months, I don't believe would be detrimental. And I do believe that there are avenues that you are currently pursuing to take care of those challenges that you're facing.
Yes.
I really don't have a problem with the logistical, like moving animal services to the police department. I've seen that in many communities. I think it works well. Emergency Operations Center, I was very pleased to see that going back to the fire department. So it's not a matter of that. It's just that we will be hopefully soon having a new city manager on board.
Any other comments? No. Councilman DeRusso?
First, I have a
Mayor Pro
question.
Tem, Councilman DeRusso.
Thank you. First, I have a question for the city manager. Then I have a couple comments. The operations and compliance department seems like it has a rather broad portfolio, and so I was wondering if you could move, one, two, three of those to a different department. I specifically was looking maybe like Parks and Rec, maybe under Community Services. That kind of seems like it might go together a little bit better. You just try to balance some of the stuff out. Like I said, it just seems like really broad portfolio, a lot of different things. And if we're going to make a change, we want to make sure that someone, doesn't get overwhelmed with a variety of things, because all of the other things in the other departments kind of go together, right? Not sure what that was. Under public works, they all go together, right? Because gas, water, sewer, streets, they all have to work together really closely. So those make sense to me. Like I said, it just seems a little bit broad on the operation and compliance. What do you think?
Yes, and you're right. You want to look at the span of control. Um, and if you recall, there was a special assignment that was issued back August of 2023, and uh, the purpose there was to try and alleviate some of the department heads, and parking recreation fell under community service prior to being that and we didn't put it on here, but community service deals with special events, and that's a, a year-round thing, and that's a job in itself. So we did try and alleviate some of that by moving out the Parks and Recreation. Not to say that it couldn't work again, but that was one of the reasons why it was moved out and recommended under the same uh, format. But again, that isn't something that is dead set, and it could be reevaluated to move back.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And now I'm sure people will be shocked to find out that I disagree with what you had said, because we just did another interview tonight for a prospective city manager, and best case it'll be a couple weeks to a month before we probably finalize that, make an offer they accept, maybe a couple months after that before they actually are able to get here because they might have to move. And then you don't want someone coming in and day one making massive changes because they don't really know enough yet, right? So it's most likely going to be, and some of the answers in the questions that we had given to the candidates, they talked about coming in, waiting good 4, 6, 7 months before they start making changes to make sure they have the information they need. So right now, on that timeline, we're talking potentially almost next summer before they start making changes, right? And and so um, we, I, I personally hate Mr. Chavez's title. Whether sometimes it's come said as interim city manager, sometimes it's said acting city manager. Either one, I don't care. In my mind, he's the city manager. We expect him to find problems when they're there and try to fix them and provide us the best recommendations that he can. So he has taken the appropriate amount of time. He's made these recommendations. Um, we, I think, need to rely on his judgment. And as he said, if the new person comes in a couple months in, they're like, no, that's just not working for me. They can make the change. We can change this org chart basically whenever we want. So I have no problem proceeding forward with the recommendations.
I disagree with you, sir. And the reason is,
Hold on.
excuse me,
Any comments from this side, Tina?
I think we should wait until we have the city manager in place, because he might have some other recommendations different from what we have here.
Councilman JP?
We're not acting on it today anyway, so
So it's just a presentation.
it's just
Well,
a presentation.
but we need to let him know should he proceed forward with, putting the actual, would that be a resolution or an ordinance, either one together, because we don't want him to go through the time and effort that is going to be wasted. So I think we need to at least provide him that level of directions, even though we wouldn't be making the formal approval today.
Um,
I think we're
problem
wait.
with that. I have no problem with that, Mr. Drew,
What,
with what you said.
proceeding forward or
Yeah.
delaying?
Proceeding forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
My-
think
Like
we'll
you
be
said,
overridden
We
today.
can always change it again when the new city manager comes in.
Yeah, but see, by us not changing it right now, like they did in the past when Mr. previous city manager wanted to do temporary assignments, new city manager can do that, even though he may not agree with the charter that's on there now. But he can reassign it. But right now is not the time to be changing it for him to change it when he has that power to do it at the time of his doing decision. So we can leave it the same as it was until this gentleman comes in or jail lady and find out this is my administration. That way I feel it's best fit for the city. It's not us to judge and say this is good now. It's the gentleman in charge who's going to decide how he wants to run his administration. And right now we're telling him this is how we want him to run the administration. I would let him do it. So I wouldn't change anything.
I, the way I see it, this organization is more or less the same organization that was previously, right? The only thing would be the operational compliance is directly under the city manager. But right now, you're in charge of everything. You know, because you are the city manager, you are the operations, you are everything. So everything comes to you regardless. The only difference would be the animal control would be on the police department. Animal services would be under your chief. You're gonna pick up, and he's probably already doing it. I mean, so I understand that we can proceed by giving you the directives, but I think by the 13th or the 14th, we will know where we're at on the city manager, and then that person could be, you know, kind of brought on this, and then by the end of the month, we can proceed on it. I mean, we've done it before. We wait till the second session to approve things, so I think by the second session would be great. Yes, ma'am.
Here,
Yes,
Mayor,
ma'am. You got the dice.
Mr. Chavez, according to what Councilman
Doris.
Jesse said, that you can allow or you have the ability and authority to assign temporary assignments.
Right.
So then you could do some of this right now in the interim.
I know that you weren't here back in August of 2023, but there was a temporary assignment which kind of follows what you see here on paper, and that's a 1 year assignment, which at that point the city manager must make a formal recommendation, which I'm bringing forward. Um, and yes, there's nothing to say that we can do a different assignment, but it really shouldn't be the same one since there has to be a permanent solution, and which I'm bringing forward here today. One thing I want to mention that whether it's this one or the current one that we're on, we do need to adopt an organizational chart for October 1st. That's how our budget will be uh, presented and adopted. So again, whether it's this one or the previous one, we do have to adopt a chart.
If I may follow up to your comment just now, if we have to adopt an organizational chart to go along with the budget, why was that not done last year? Since I understand, unless I'm mistaken or provided inaccurate information, that the last organizational chart was approved in 2022.
As far as
You all didn't approve one last year.
by itself, it wasn't in an ordinance by itself, but it was presented with last year's budget, which got adopted by the ordinance back in September. But it wasn't presented
Or
in
approved.
it wasn't presented by itself in an ordinance, but it was presented along with the budget.
Mayor, just to clarify, there's been a kind of verbal disagreement about when it was adopted. Sometimes in the past it was adopted as a separate ordinance, the organizational chart was, and then it started being adopted as part of the budget. Last year, that's how it was adopted. It was adopted as part of the budget, and the budget relied on that organizational chart. It was based on the organizational chart that was attached to the budget according to the finance department. And so that's what they look at. They look at the chart to determine where the money's going to go.
So we possibly could do that as well this year. That's an option.
Yes.
Thank you.
See what happened even last year. We have not approved an organizational chart. I don't think it should still be implemented into the budget fiscal year budget book until it's approved on the organizational charts. It should stay the same until it's approved in the organizational chart to put those duties, because once we approve the fiscal year and this department is implemented here on this budget, it's not to say it can be changed or not. I mean, it's not correct. It should be what it's already existing and not what is proposed.
No, it has.
Because it can always change the organizational chart next year or give those temporary assignments to clarify next year what's working and not working,
And
and what's right and what's not.
Councilman Gutierrez, this is why it's being it's being presented this way is because that's the disagreement. Is it a valid organizational chart when it's attached to the budget, or is it proper to adopt it separately? And so Councilman Lopez has wanted it to be adopted separately from the budget, and this is accommodating that request.
No.
No, I'm not accommodating. I'm just saying the way it's presented. You know, we all agreed to wait on the new city manager. The book that they give us in the proposal, it already has implemented to what's already assigned to that department or directors they have them now. You know, that position has been titled 4 times. I don't know if I can say. It's been titled 4 times, though differently. If I can say it, can I say it?
I'm not sure what you're saying, but I'm
Okay.
going to say yes.
That department, that temporary assignment was created last year. It was called maintenance and operation and maintenance auditor. Then it came operations and compliance auditor.
At,
And
at
now it's
this
jumped into a
point,
department. Now it's coming to a direct.
Councilman Lopez, at this point, we're looking at an organizational chart that Mr. Chavez had worked on, and I think it would be wise for us to kind of keep it in mind. He can still operate because he is
Yes,
Councilman
exactly.
Mayor Pro Tem DeRuz. He is the city manager, acting city manager. He has control of all departments. He can move people around, do whatever he wants. It's his. But we just gotta kind of wait it out
Mhm.
and have this continue this discussion, and then maybe he can bring organizational A and B, and then the city, the council adopts the charter or the organizational chart that they want to live for the next year. So thank you
Sir.
very much, Mr. Charles, for this one. To me, I like I said, I don't have a problem, but I just want to kind of wait it out and see what happens and review it with the candidates when they come in, and maybe they consider it and we bring it back. Okay. Next item. B.
4B, it's budget work session on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 through 2025.
Mayor, City Council, before I hand it over here to our finance department, to make the presentation here tonight, I did want to address, really quick, the general fund revenues. And as you'll see through the presentation, this particular, budget presentation for the general fund currently is in a deficit, and wanted to address that before we move forward. Want to mention that the city council will receive a proposed budget book uh, at the next regular city council meeting, which is August 13th. And on there, we'll have a more of a balanced budget for the general fund. But the purpose for this presentation that was put together, it was put together based on the requests that were received and any consideration that we had based on the revenue that is being projected for next year. And as Ms. Soto will explain here in a bit, but again, going back to the revenues, I wanted to kind of address that here really quick. I did provide this worksheet here. I was just going to discuss it, but I figured that I at least provide this as backup to my presentation here before Ms. Soto gets started. So the TML has a survey that they do every other year, and it's titled "Where Did Texas Cities Get Their Money?" And every survey, again, it depends on the Texas cities that provide the information. So, and you can see this here on the screen, that the revenue is broken down within the survey by property tax, sales tax, franchise, permit fees, fines, interest earning, transfers and grants, and other general fund revenue. So on the left hand side, you see that's the TMO survey, and they do it by percentage. So you can look at this, and you can see that the majority of the cities in Texas generate their general fund revenue from property tax. What we're going to be uh, proposing, uh, based on the current information that we have at the moment, are our property tax uh, revenue is 20% of our general fund revenue. And if you look at all the other categories, they pretty much fall in line with that of the TMO survey up until you get to transfers. Uh, the survey says general fund revenues account for 2% in transfers. Our city here has 34%. The last column is the what's currently uh, amended in our current budget for fiscal year 23-24, and you can kind of see it's kind of similar to what's being proposed. So I wanted to focus on the property tax, and we, recognize that in property tax for the city here, we do have a tax rate that is above average. Average for Texas cities is around 53 cents. Um, but there's a reason for that, and it also depends on valuations, right? That come in. And if you want to go to the next slide, uh, and here's a history that I just put together, 20 plus years of history regarding our property tax. You can see under the net estimated valuations, how that's gone from the year 2004 all the way to our current year. And I included the net estimated valuation that we received for the current budget. The next three rows is the adopted tax rate for that particular fiscal year. Uh, at this point, if you want to look at the total tax rate, within those 20, 21 years, there has been an increase in tax rate of about 22 cents during that time period. So in essence, it's 1 cent per year. And now looking at the previous two columns, M&O rate. M&O rate is the property tax that goes into the general fund. The INS rate is the rate that is used to pay off any debt, and currently the debt that we do have is certificates of obligation, which we borrowed throughout the years. And you can see that the M&O rate back in 2004 was 39 cents. The M&O rate that was adopted in this current year is 29 cents. So what does that mean? That during this 20-year time period, your M&O rate has decreased. Doesn't mean that it's less revenue because the valuations have gone up. It's increased, but you really want to try and keep that M&O rate either at the current rate or a little bit more to be able to catch up to your operating expenses. And so throughout the years, we've had an opportunity to either increase or keep the property tax rate the same. So every time that we look at this, we want to really look at how it affects the M&O rate. The INS rate, there's nothing that we can do. We have to adopt the INS rate based on the calculations that the worksheet comes out, and that's because you need that rate to pay off your debt, right? The M&O rate is the one that pretty much suffers whenever there is an adjustment to the overall tax rate. And I remind everybody that's the amount that goes into the general fund. So as you go through the presentation here with Ms. Soto, there's an increase in overall general fund expenditures, and I want to caution everybody that there's different expenditures. There's recurring expenditures, and the other expenditures are usually one-time expenditures. The operating expenditures, you want to make sure that you can uh, come up with operating revenue to be able to pay for it year in and year out. And as you'll see during the presentation, the highest reoccurring expenditure is going to be salaries. And as we continue to go up in salaries, if we're not going up in reoccurring revenues, we're going to get to a point to where we're going to have to make cuts elsewhere. And usually those cuts result in either supplies, contractual, or we're going to have to make a decision on the revenues, or establishing different revenues, or looking at the existing revenues and making a recommendation for increase. So as we go through the presentation, I just want y'all to keep that in mind, that when we present the proposed budget, um, one thing that we are going to recommend, and just putting it out there, is recommending a tax increase so that we can add to that M&O rate to try and cut through the deficit that we'll see here tonight. Also, we're going to have to look at increasing other fees that most likely haven't been touched in more than a decade. And although those would be very minimal, those are required to try and keep up with just the operating expenses that we have year in and year out. But with that said, I wanted to kind of touch up on the revenue first as we'll go through the presentation here, and you'll see that the deficit we'll have to address, and as we bring forward the proposed budget, we want to make sure that that's more of a balanced budget than we currently see here tonight. But any questions up to this point?
May I ask a question?
Council, yes.
You mentioned the debt, so our deficit. Yeah, I think that's the word you used. So what is our debt ratio, or what is our deficit at this point?
The deficit I was referring to is the current budget where that's being proposed for the next fiscal year. When you look at all the all the revenue and expenses, right now it's showing a negative balance for the proposed budget. But
What is that figure?
Rox, do you have?
I know it's estimated at this time based
Yes,
on budget projection.
and it's part of your presentation packet under the 2024-2025 proposed budget. Right now, it's a negative 2.3 million.
Excuse me, negative what?
2.3 million.
2.3 million. Okay.
And
Thank
at the end of the presentation, I'll go ahead and address how we can tackle that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions from the guys? If not, Roxy can go ahead and start her presentation.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms.
Good evening, Council. I'm happy to be here from a different angle, but nonetheless ready to continue with these workshops. I wanted to recap a little bit about what we've done regarding the FY 24-25 budget. On the week of March 18th, we had our City Council budget priorities for fiscal year 24-25 meetings. Individual meetings where we talked about the budget process, development and timeline, personnel compensation and wages, hotel occupancy tax allocations, and convention center feasibility study, as well as property taxes, streets and infrastructure, and other council priorities. Then on April 16th, we had a capital improvements project presentation where we discussed completed projects, tax-supported projects, and self-supported projects. And on May 21st, we had the fixed assets requests presentation where we showed all the requests that were submitted by staff. So here we are today talking about the general fund. I did want to mention that this is a draft document of just the general fund. In next council meeting on August 13th, we will be providing the entire proposed budget, which will also include your special revenue, your enterprise, your debt service, and your internal service funds. And we will also be discussing certified values and your property tax rate. And then at the end of August and early September, that's when we'll dive deeper into the debt service, enterprise, and internal service. And I did want to mention that if I am not able to provide an answer at the moment, I would be glad to take it back and provide anything that is specifically requested from the council, and I can do that. Okay, so I am going to be presenting the general fund, and it'll be up on the screen. Okay, on page 3 of the attachment, we have the revenue and expense changes for the general fund. The first column shows the revenue and expenses by type. The second column shows you the 2022-2023 actual revenues received or expenses. Your third column shows the 2023-2024 adopted budget. Your column number 4 shows the 2023-2024 amended budget. And then the fifth column on this chart shows the 23-24 projected budget. And then the final column shows the 24-25 proposed budget. This is the same template that you'll see across all of the pages. The top section of this chart shows it's broken out into your property taxes, your fines and forfeitures, service charges, license and permits, intergovernmental and miscellaneous revenues. And then the middle section of this chart shows your operating expenses in the general fund. The bottom middle section shows your other resources and expenses. And then your last section at the bottom shows your fund balances. On this page, I did want to go into the first line item, which is your taxes. The taxes includes your property taxes, which, as Mr. Travis mentioned, it makes up about 19.82% of the general fund revenue, and it's one of the largest revenue sources for the general fund. The current property tax revenue is based on the certified values in the city of Del Rio as appraised by the Valverde Appraisal District. As a reminder, last budget season, the City Council approved to lower the property tax rate by 1 cent to 0.697000 per 100 valuation. And then in June of this year, the City Council approved a 4% homestead exemption for residential homeowners and an increase from 7,000 to 10,000 homestead exemption for persons over the age of 65. In this budget, we do see for this taxes category a decrease of $357,100 or a minus 2.07%. And in your next line item, I will dive deeper into each of these on the next pages for your fines, service charges, license and permits, intergovernmental, and miscellaneous. Most of those also do show either flat or decreases compared to the adopted budget. On your sales tax, which is also included in the taxes line item, the sales tax makes up 29.78% of the general fund revenue. Current trends demonstrate a 3 to 4% growth over the next 5 years. The sales tax is budgeted at $9 million, an increase of $77,200 or 0.49% compared to the adopted budget. And as a reminder, 1/8% of the city sales tax is allocated to the Economic Development Corporation. Your service charges makes up $637,900 or 2.11% of the general fund revenues. Most revenues remain flat with minimal change, if any. And as Mr. Chavez mentioned, the plan is to update the existing fee schedule to reflect fees that are contributing towards our operating expenses and will have an impact in them. So we will be bringing the fee schedule back to the city council in one of the upcoming budget workshops to discuss that more into detail. On this page, I also wanted to mention the personnel because you'll see in each budget we have it broken out by personnel, supplies, contractual. But overall, your personnel, we have 315 full-time and part-time budgeted positions. 27 are seasonal and 7 is our city council, and that's just in your general fund. Our personnel budget includes wages, fringe benefits, and payroll taxes. This budget has a 2% cost of living adjustment for non-civil hourly and salaried positions. This is across the board, including department heads.
What was that percentage again, sorry?
2% cost of living for non-civil hourly and salaried positions, and this includes department heads. We pulled a little bit of information. The appraisal district is proposing a 2 to 3% COLA. The county is proposing a 5% COLA, and the school district is proposing a stipend of about $1,200. So we're comparatively close. Additionally, there is a 2% merit allocation built into the personnel budget to fund the merit increase pay program that we have. As a reminder, this program became effective January 1st, 2024, so this fiscal year. And this is incorporated into the annual evaluations that supervisors are required to complete based on the scores or the ratings that the supervisor provides. It determines whether the employee is eligible for a merit increase. Also included in your personnel salary budget is a 5% increase in health, dental, and life benefits. That's still to be finalized, but that's some of the projections we're receiving from our contracts with our with Mario and with our HR and risk management. And our retirement costs include the 6% employee contribution rate, which went into effect already fiscal year 23-24, your 50% updated service credit, and 30% non-retro COLA to annuitants. And again, this was all approved in 23-24, and we're continuing that into your 24-25 budget. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into the next page, page 4, which is your general fund expense summary by division. And this chart just shows you by each division that we have in the general fund, your actual adopted, amended, projected, and your proposed for each division. It shows you the growth or the decrease per division. The next page, page 5, is your general fund expenses summary by category. This is broken out by division again, and it shows you the personnel budget across the board, the supplies, contractual, your purchase for resale, which we only have the golf course that has a budget for that. We have your capital items, your transfers out, intergovernmental, short-term financing, and reserves. For your total expense budget of $32,537,800. Page 6 shows the general fund revenue information, and this is where I was mentioning that it's broken out a little bit more, showing the types of revenues that are received for the general fund. So we have our first category, which is your taxes. You have your property tax with a decrease of $189,700 or 3.28% compared to the adopted budget. You have your property tax fee with a proposed budget of $230,000, which is an increase of $30,000 from the 23-24 budget. You have your penalty and interest at $160,000 with an increase of $20,000. Sales tax proposed budget at $9 million with an increase of $44,200. Your franchise fees, but proposed budget at $2,127,000 with an increase of $42,400. And your mixed beverage tax with an increase of $6,000, with your overall total taxes at a decrease of $47,100 or minus 0.27%. This information is based on our calculations that we have to compute for our property taxes, but it's also, we combine our historical information on here. I just wanted to mention that because I know you probably see it a little bit flat compared to our projected or the year before from our 22-23. In the next category, we have our fines and forfeitures, which includes municipal court, your dog pound, and your state violation fines. The municipal court remains the same but proposed budgeted at $200,000. The dog pound fines at $12,000, and the state violation fines at $257,800. The next section is the service charges. And here we have our sale of maps documents, proposed budgeted at $0. Our accident report fees, proposed budgeted at $7,400. Police reports, proposed budgeted at $5,000. Demo and lot clearing fees, that one is our this year's adopted budget is at $40,000. However, we're projecting a $31,000, so this year a decrease of $9,000. So next year we are proposing a $34,100 revenue budget for this line item. We have our Adopt a Pet program for $100. The birth certificates, that one, the budget is $75,500. We're projecting $78,000 this fiscal year, so that's why we're also projecting $78,000 in your 24-25 budget. Death certificates, that budget is at $7,000. We're projecting an $8,000 and we're also proposing an $8,000 budget. We have our Buena Vista pool fees, budgeted at $25,000. We have a projected revenue of $21,000. Next year we are proposing a $27,500, and the slight increase is because we are projecting or will be proposing the fee schedule to be revised, and we don't know those figures yet, but there should be some slight increase once we do revise some of those fees. Our Moore Park pool fees, that was budgeted at $25,000. Our projected is closer to $4,200. We are proposing a $27,500 for next year, as this year it was closed for several months, and so that is why it has an effect on our projected budget, but next year we should remain open as normal. We have our recreational fees, budgeted at $29,000. Our projected is closer to $33,300, and our proposed budget is $36,300. Our golf revenue, this year it's budgeted at $350,000. Our projection is closer to $328,100. Next year we're proposing $329,000. The inner administrative services, that is budgeted at $14,300, and next year we are proposing to increase it to $50,000. And our indirect WIC costs, our budget is $35,000, and our proposed remains at $35,000. Next section is your license and permits. On this first line item, building permits, residential, we have broken it out into residential and commercial for next year's budget so that it's easier to identify any growth that we have in the city, because right now it's all combined into one line item and it's difficult to distinguish that, but once we separate it, it'll be easier to separate those accounts and see what kind of growth we're having in residential and commercial. In this year, we have $220,000 adopted. Our projected is closer to $83,000. Next year, we are proposing to increase it back to $220,000 in hopes that will remain the same as we have in the past years. This year was a little bit of an anomaly, and in the past years, we've always usually reached about $200,000. We have our electrical permits budgeted at $60,000. Our projection is closer to $30,000, and next year we're proposing again a similar situation where we will be closer to what we have received in the past, which is we're hoping for $50,000. Plumbing permits, it's budgeted at $40,000. Our projection is closer to $30,000, and next year's proposed budget is $35,000. I'm going to jump down to health permits. Our budget is $60,000. Our projected budget is $68,000, and next year we're proposing a $74,800 revenue budget, and this is another line item or fee that's going to be reviewed with the fee schedule. Garage sale permit, we're budgeted at $20,000. We should be receiving the $20,000 in our projected budget, and next year we're increasing it to $22,000. Again, this item will be reviewed with our fee schedule. Our zoning permits, our budget is $10,000. We're projecting $11,000, and next year at $11,000 as well. Our plan and spec review, our budget is $37,000. Our projection is closer to $18,000, and our proposed budget is $30,000 for next year. Again, that one falls in line with our building and electrical permits. Our building and electrical. Then we have our other registrations budgeted at $26,500, and our projection is closer to $18,300, and we're proposing a $23,600 budget for next year. Our alcoholic beverage license, that one remains flat across the years. We budgeted $11,000 in 23-24, projecting $11,000, and next year proposed at $11,000. And your mechanical permits remains flat as well. We're budgeting $20,000 this year and projecting $20,000 next year. Our other permits, that's budgeted at $30,200, where projection is closer to $60,000. And there's some of our permits and fees that we're receiving in this account that need to be separated and distributed to other line items, and we're working on that. And so that's why next year we're proposing for it to be back to $40,000. Okay. The next section is the intergovernmental revenue, which is your grants. Mostly all of these are grants. In our 23-24 adopted budget, we had the local border security grant budgeted at $49,300. Our projection is closer to $33,600, and next year we're proposing $0. A lot of these grants are still being reviewed and are in the process of being reviewed by the state. We should be receiving information if it gets awarded soon, but until we get that, that's when we'll enter the budget on this grants. So you'll see that a little bit on some of these grants. We have, I did want to mention on the Lone Star grant, we budgeted $0 in 23-24, but we are projecting $255,100, and that is for 4 patrol vehicles, as well as the security cameras underneath the International Bridge. Under the Stone Garden grant, under 23-24 adopted, we have 268,800 budgeted. We're projecting 294,700. Next year, we are proposing 175,700, and this is based on the grant award that we have received. We have the bullet resistant shield grant projected. We had budgeted $0, but we are projecting 58,000 because that was received throughout the year. It's a similar situation with the body cameras. We had budgeted $0, but we are projecting $235,400. This one, the grant will be open September 1st, and we are working with the police department as well as purchasing to purchase this item as soon as we can so that we can replace some of the body cameras that are needing to be replaced. And so that's why we have it under our projected revenues, and you'll see it also under the police department expenses. Okay, and then we have the dispatch for Valverde Regional Medical Center Hospital budgeted at 290,000, and that should remain the same throughout next year because it is a contract that we have with them. We have our payment in lieu of taxes budgeted at 12,000. This year we are projecting 17,000 and proposing 17,000 next year. On our miscellaneous section, we have items here such as our interest income, rentals for barricades, others, pavilions. And we also have donations from our police, 4th of July, Fiesta de Amistad, animal shelter, miscellaneous items. And we also have seen some insurance claims proceeds, which are revenues that we receive from vehicles or equipment where we have a total loss, and so we do receive those proceeds. And we also have gain of fixed assets proceeds, which for this year the 77,900 was for a property that we sold, as well as mowers and some foreign currency that we sold. Under the other financing sources, that is where we have our transfers in. Under the 23-24 adopted budget, it is budgeted at $9,555,000. Our projection is closer to $10,177,700. The difference in that is due to the International Bridge. Next year, we are proposing $10,270,000. I'm sorry about that. So our total revenues and funding sources for the general fund in the 24-25 proposed budget is $30,219,500.
Any questions from the dais to Soto? Councilman DeRuz, Mayor Pro Tem? You had 42 questions earlier. You down to 2?
I said I have 42 per page, but I'll hold off to that.
If not, go ahead, proceed.
Just Mayor, Council, just real quick, going back to page 6, under the taxes, again, just what I discussed previously, you're looking at property tax there at 5.6 million for the proposed budget, but I also want to highlight sales tax at 9 million. If it wasn't really for the sales tax that we've seen the increase, really under property tax we would pretty much see a flat line if it wasn't for the increase in sales tax. And also just just for comparison's sake, the property tax covers 1/5 of our operating expense. So again, going back to that survey I mentioned, it should cover 40%, but currently it is covering 20%, which is 1/5. And so I just want to make everyone aware. And all the other revenues, if you look at the history of it, it pretty much is a flat line. And so, as I mentioned previously, we are going to recommend some increases in some of those fees we can't touch because they're required by the state to be at a certain rate. But those that we can control, we will be bringing forward a recommendation for increase. Thank you. Oh, and Roxy, on the expenses, if you can just highlight some of the areas instead of the line by line.
For each one? Okay.
Yes.
The first division is the city council budget under page 9. Um, the the payroll wages under the proposed budget is 33,600, and that is an increase, a potential increase of the $100 to $200 compensation for the city council members. Under the supplies category, under your under your operating expenses, you do have a decrease there of 9,800, and the majority of it is due to a decrease in your supplies. I mean, your food supplies and ice. It did go down from 13,000 to 8,000. It's budgeted closer to what we actually spend in that account. Under the contractual services and other costs, we do have a proposed budget of 139,200, which is a decrease of 20,500 compared to the adopted budget. Some of the items funded in here under your contractual is your federal and state lobbyists, and you also have some increases in there due to the internal services transfer out to computer services. And on the bottom we have our intergovernmental, which is proposed budget at $140,000, and there's no changes in that budget. Okay, I'm going to go into the next department, which is the city attorney budget under page 11. The payroll wages, we're budgeting the full amount for the full-time city attorney. And so you have a proposed budget of $242,100 in that category. The supplies is budgeted at $4,200, an increase of $1,600 compared to the adopted budget. Under the contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $156,300, which is an increase of $11,100 compared to the current year's budget. In there, we have included our Thompson and Reuters to pay for Westlaw, the AI, and a different, upgraded version than what they're normally using. And I also wanted to mention under the professional services line item, you do see an increase under your projected budget, which was $250,000, and we're proposing $115,000, and that's mainly due to what we had projected paid out due to the city attorney vacancy using DNRB and Z, and next year we project to not use their services as much as we have this year. Next budget is the city manager budget. Under the personnel budget, we have budgeted $702,800, which is a decrease of $23,000 compared to the 23-24 budget. Under the supplies category, we have budgeted $20,600, which is a decrease of $4,500. That's also due to a small decrease in food supplies and ice. And under our contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $113,600, and that's an increase of $10,800 from our adopted budget. And majority of that is due to some additional costs for janitorial services. And under the reserves, we have budgeted $50,000, which totals the grand total of $887,000, which is a decrease of $16,700 from the 23-24 adopted budget. The next division is the communications and marketing budget. The personnel budget is proposed budget is $295,600, which is an increase of $23,500 compared to the 23-24 adopted budget. Under your supplies, we're proposing $8,400, which is a decrease of $16,500 compared to the 23-24 budget. Mainly that's due to them acquiring some of the items that they needed under the 23-24. They were able to buy what it is that they needed, and so they're jumping back down to their operating costs. We also have it included in there some marketing and promo and some of the branded items that they buy for their events.
Hey, Roxy, but they're also adding an event technician too, right? Because it wasn't.
The event technician was added in 23-24 budget in this current year.
But we haven't hired one, right?
Yes, we do have an event technician. It was moved from the Paul Pope Theater to the Communications and Marketing Division, while the Paul Pope Theater remains closed.
Go ahead.
Okay. Under contractual services and other costs, the proposed budget is $53,900, an increase of $3,700, and in that account we do have various items, and some of the items in their training and travel was to get some drone license as well. But also we have our internal transfers out to fund computer services, and that's where you'll see a majority of the increase in that category. The next budget is the community services budget. The 24-25 proposed budget for personnel is $125,700, an increase of $4,100. Under the supplies category, we have a grand budget of $900, which is a decrease of $100 from 23-24 budget year. Under our contractual services and other costs, we have $33,600 in the proposed, which is an increase of $6,200 compared to the adopted. I did want to mention the $20,000 under other contractual services is to fund the Bethel Center contract that we have with them. Under the capital line item is $5,000 under the 24-25 proposed budget for a trailer for community events. And under intergovernmental, we have $111,900 budgeted under the proposed budget, which is a decrease of $2,700 compared to the adopted budget. Under the other community events in the projected 23-24, that large increase of $105,100 is due to the solar eclipse expenses, which were presented back in June.
Roxy, sorry for the interruption. I have a question. If I saw correctly, this is the only page that doesn't have any training budget line item.
Okay.
I don't know, Manuel, if you can talk to that. There's no training line item for this one, just to, keep people up to speed on whatever they need. And I think I saw that line on every other page of the budget book.
Yes, sir. And each department submits their own request, so that's something that Ms. Mesa could go back and readdress. So
If it's needed, please, try to get it in there because there's no point in trying to do your job, if you're not fully up to speed. So.
Currently, I was able to attend trainings using the grant programs. So for transportation, there was funding there, and WIC, there's also funding.
Okay.
And nutrition, a lot of those were done online.
Okay.
So
Awesome. Just want to make sure that you're getting the training
yes,
that you need.
And other trainings were provided through HR, but through TML, so there was
Okay.
no cost to
Awesome.
the city. So,
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
It might be a good idea to identify those resources for transparency purposes, and so our citizens will be aware that there is continuing education and training for the employees of the city of Del Rio.
Thank you.
The next budget is the operations and compliance budget under page 19. Our total personnel budget is $125,600, which is an increase of $9,700. Under the supplies, the proposed budget is $600, a decrease of $300 from the 23-24 adopted budget. And under contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $7,500, which is an increase of $1,000. And the majority of that is due to some training as well as our internal and administrative service charges that increased by $1,000. The next budget is the city secretary budget. Under the personnel category, we have budgeted $263,300, an increase of $14,800 compared to the adopted budget. Under the supplies, we have budgeted $5,300, a decrease of $4,200, and that is due to election supplies that are now being charged under our contractual services. Under our contractual services, we have budgeted $67,200 for the proposed budget, which is a decrease of $24,000. The difference in that is due to the election that we had this year. Next year, we are budgeting in under the other contractual services account, $16,600, and the majority of that will be for charter review election.
Just for the record, Mari, it's a lot lower because we're able to share with the county, correct?
We share the cost, plus now because the ballots are digital, it's more cost effective.
Okay, now we're gonna jump in under municipal court, under the authorized positions. We have included a part-time bailiff, which would be new under the 24-25 proposed budget. So that portion of funds is included in your personnel, in the municipal court personnel budget. I did want to point that out and mention it, and you'll see the difference here under this page 22. Under their budget, you have your personnel budgeted at $429,200, which is an increase of $35,600, and that is due to the part-time bailiff that will be able to assist with some of the court hearings and also assist with some of our warrants and citations that are backlogged. Our supplies budget there is $6,700, which is an increase of $4,600. Majority of that is due to some equipment and supplies that the division is needing, such as filing cabinets and some other items to make the courtroom a little more more advanced in by having computers and different items that the supervisor can use while she's there at court. Under the contractual budget, we have budgeted $287,000, which is an increase of $24,900. A majority of that is due to the professional services of $30,000, which is for collection services to Lineberger. And then we also have an increase under training and travel to increase training for staff. And Under capital, we have $6,000 budgeted under the proposed budget, which is for one metal detector. Under development services, page 25, the proposed budget for personnel is $429,000, which is an increase of $53,300. In this category, we are budgeting for the chief building official. Last year when we worked on the adopted, we did include a small hiring lag just because we didn't have one, and this year we are budgeting the full position. So that's why you have an increase of $53,300. Under supplies, we have budgeted $10,800, a decrease of $400. Under contractual service and other costs, we have budgeted $82,400, a decrease of $13,500. Majority of that is due to the recalculation that we made for our internal services transfers out to our fleet, facility maintenance, and computer services. And then our another decrease that we had there was under other costs, and that's due to some credit card services decrease that we're seeing in that account. The next budget is the planning and zoning budget. Under personnel, we have budgeted $337,900, which is a decrease of $800. Under the supplies category, we have budgeted $3,000, an increase of $700. Some of the items, or some of the small increase there is due to some of the food and clothing. Mainly the food is for some potential round table discussions that the interim city manager would like to pick back up again. And then also a decrease in our general office supplies. And our contractual services and other costs is budgeted at $28,800, a decrease of $900. So our grand total is $369,700 under this budget. Public Works and Engineering, the personnel budget is $319,000, an increase of $4,700. The supplies budget is $3,800, an increase of $1,300. That's due to a chair for one of their admin assistants and some toners and other minor small hand tools that they're going to buy, or that they requested. Under contractual services and other costs, we have under the proposed budget $60,400. The increase there is due to some AutoCAD software license renewal, as well as some additional training for staff. So our grand total is $383,200 for Public Works and Engineering. Human Resources budget, our total personnel is $403,600, an increase of $11,400. Under the supplies, the budget is $18,800, a decrease of $4,800. They reduced some testing and ID material, so they'll be reusing some of the books that they use for their civil service. Under contractual services and other costs, the budget is $107,200, an increase of $14,100. A majority of that is under the line item other contractual services and the internal administrative services. That's where they also charge appraisal and lab testing for new applicants. And also a small increase under their training and travel for their new safety coordinator training, as well as for their staff. Finance budget, the total personnel is $500,400, an increase of $12,800. Under supplies, The budget is 5,500, a decrease of 3,900. And then under contractual services and other costs, the budget is 476,100, an increase of $45,000. And that is due to some of our audit service increased costs, as well as the increase to pay for the portion that we pay to the Valverde County Tax Office for tax collections, as well as to the appraisal district. The total services and other costs for that budget is 476,100, an increase of 45,000, and the grand total is $982,000. Under the accounting budget, total personnel is 399,500, an increase of 83,500 compared to the 23-24 adopted budget. Under this category, in looking at the budget, I believe we did under budget the 23-24 adopted, and so that's why you see a large decrease there from 83,000 to 500. The supplies budget is 5,700, a decrease of $400. The contractual services and other costs is 63,600, an increase of 20,900. The majority of that is due to internal administrative services, some increases in training and travel for the payroll specialist, as well as some Excel training. The purchasing budget under page 37, the personnel budget is 282,300, an increase of 19,400. The total supplies is 8,300, a decrease of 3,300. And under contractual services and other costs, the budget is 71,900, an increase of 12,900. And under capital, there is an item for a forklift budgeted at $90,000. And for the grand total of $452,500. Under parks, we have the personnel budget of $1,267,700, a decrease of $74,000. The reason there is I am budgeting closer to what our actuals are, and as well as removing the director. We had a parks and recreation director position that had been budgeted, and we are removing that position. Under your supplies category, we have budgeted $98,900, which is an increase of $45,000. And this is for Texas Multicam turf maintenance. It was budgeted under our recreation budget under 23-24, and we're just moving it over from recreation to parks. So you'll see the decrease under recreation as well. Under contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $521,000, an increase of $18,200. I did want to mention the cane removal is budgeted under other contractual services. And we have a capital item to replace a vehicle at $50,000 for our grand total of $1,937,600.
Roxy, I have another question, Mr. Chavez. It says that the Parks and Recreation Director position is being removed. Was that because of your recommendation here? And so, does it need to go back in?
No.
Just want to clarify.
That was from the previous year where we had split that up and added that facility maintenance division.
Okay.
And we just didn't clean that up at that time.
Thank you.
The recreation budget shows a personnel budget of $247,800, an increase of $8,600. And under supplies, we have budgeted 23,900, a decrease of 29,200. That's due to removing the Texas Multicam. But we did include a budget in here for recreational supplies for a youth basketball league that the division is wanting to implement. Under their contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted 20,200, an increase of 4,100. In here, we have budgeted the Boys and Girls Club contract. We also have budgeted $1,000 under other contractual services for referees for some of the games that they have, and we also have the small increase under training and travel for lifeguard certifications for a budget of 291,900. Under the San Felipe Springs Golf Course, the personnel budget is 454,400, a decrease of 13,100. Under the supplies budget, we have 44,400. That's an increase of 9,500. The majority of that is due to the internal service transfer out, but they will be also buying some chemicals, fertilizers, and also they do want to market a little bit more for tournaments, so they'll be buying tournaments and also promoting the golf course, so they will be buying some print and items to do so. Under contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted 93,300, an increase of 23,500. Under purchase for resale, we have budgeted 35,000, which there's no increase there compared to the current budget. And under our short-term financing for our mowing equipment, we have budgeted 106,700 for a grand total of 733,800. The police personnel budget is 6,482,000, an increase of 305,600. We have included in here some. It's not in this one. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll mention it under the dispatch, but under the supplies, we have budgeted 227,200, a decrease of 21,500. Under total services and other costs, we have budgeted 970,000, an increase of 47,800, and our grand total is 7,679,200. The next page is the combined dispatch. We've budgeted 915,100, an increase of 27,100. We have also included in here certification pay for dispatchers, so we would need to bring back that item for the certification pay ordinance to be updated, but it was requested by the department and we have included it in here. Total supplies is budgeted at 5,300, a decrease of 1,000, and our total contractual service and other costs is budgeted at 66,800, an increase of 20,700 for a grand total of 987,200. The Police Training Academy, this is budgeted, the personnel budget is 92,500, an increase of 3,800. The supplies is 8,300, and a decrease of 2,500. And total services and other costs is budgeted at 36,600, an increase of 6,900 for a grand total of 137,400. Next, we'll review some of the grants. We have our local border security grant. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we weren't budgeting anything under the 24-25 proposed budget until we know for sure that we will be receiving the grant. The Operation Stone Garden grant, the personnel budget is 142,700, and the supplies budget is 28,000, and the capital is $5,000, for a grand total of 175,700. Operation Lone Star grant, that one you'll see all of your expenses under the projected, which includes some personnel budgeted at 29,600, your supplies at 16,800, and the capital for 208,700, which is the vehicles and the security cameras. The Project Safe Neighborhoods grant. This is a grant that is funding one full-time and one part-time evidence technician. They were added in 23-24, and we're anticipating funding for these positions under this grant. So that's why you will see under your total personnel budget $83,900. The General Victims Assistance Grant, that is also funding one full-time crime victim advocate that was added in 23-24. And this is a reoccurring grant that the department and the grant writer will continue to apply for to fund this position. So you see under your total personnel budget $51,200. Under the body camera grant, under the projected, under capital we have $417,100. That's for the body cameras, the in-car bundle system, and the CAD integration software. Under the bullet resistant shields grant, we have projected $15,300 under this year's budget. Under emergency management, we've budgeted $159,700, an increase of $16,900 compared to the 23-24 budget. Under supplies, we have budgeted $1,500, an increase of $300. And under contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $112,300, an increase of $8,000, for a grand total budget of $273,500. Under fire, we have the 24-25 proposed personnel budget at $6,067,600, which is an increase of $482,800. Under supplies, we have budgeted $144,800, an increase of $13,600. Under contractual services and other costs, we have budgeted $357,000, an increase of $19,300. Under our short-term financing, we have a budget of $394,200, which is an increase of $394,200. In here, we have included our current short-term financing, which is for the fire engine, but next year we will be including the ladder fire engine truck. And under the capital budget is $74,000 for a full-size SUV for a grand total budget of $7,037,600. Neighborhood services, we have personnel budget of $315,300, an increase of $15,600. Under supplies, we have a proposed budget of $43,600, a decrease of $3,800. Under contractual services and other costs, we have a budget of $99,600, an increase of $10,800. And under capital, we have budgeted $27,500, an increase of $27,500 for a vector sprayer, riding mower, and a dump trailer, for a grand total budget of $486,000. Under animal services, under the personnel budget, we have 491,400, an increase of 42,400. Under supplies, we have 14,200, a decrease of 3,800. Here they use their supplies for various items, including fuel, chemicals, for euthanizing and safety supplies. Under contractual services and other costs, we have a budget of 88,800, a decrease of 2,300. And under capital, we have budgeted 86,300 to fund a half-ton vehicle as well as an animal transport, for a grand total budget of $680,700. Streets and drainage, we have a personnel budget of $1,293,800, a decrease of $20,500. Under supplies, we have a budget of $149,100, which is a decrease of $2,700. Under contractual, we have budgeted $132,600, an increase of $1,400. And under capital, we have budgeted $315,000, an increase of $115,000. That's to fund a vehicle, a steel wheel roller, and our street improvements budgeted at $200,000 for mill and overlay. Under traffic control, under personnel, we have budgeted $254,900, an increase of $11,500. Under supplies, we have budgeted $61,200, an increase of $4,600. And under total services and other costs, we budgeted $515,600, an increase of $136,400. And that is mainly under the other contractual services, and that is to pay for contracting services for thermal plastic street striping, a service for someone to come and do the thermoplastic street striping. And then under capital, we have budgeted $9,200 for a Graco grind laser, for a grand total of $840,900. And our last budget is the transfers out budget. Our 24-25 proposed budget is $2,088,100, an increase of $76,500. You'll see an increase under transportation for $61,100, an increase under nutrition for $103,000, an increase under economic development for $45,300, a decrease under municipal facilities of $78,000, an increase to facility maintenance for $145,100, and a decrease to fixed assets of $200,000.
Mayor, may we go back to that slide for a minute?
Yes.
For transparency's sake, because I know that that's one of our citizens have been complaining to me that we transfer out money from the general fund or from other approved budget sources. I know that oftentimes when it comes before city council, it's because now we have to, because we have to pay for something, so the transfer is met. So for transparency purposes, and because this is being recorded, would you explain why a transfer would take place from the general fund to other funds when currently, right now, we are in the budget process?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. The main reasons of why the transfers from the general fund are to other funds, usually it is to subsidize or to help assist with the other departments, because they aren't able to, their fees or their revenues or their grants aren't able to sustain themselves. And at the end of the year, we do want to see that fund balance be at zero. Otherwise, they will carry a negative every year, and you'll see it in your financial report. You'll see, and that'll continue to grow if we aren't able to fund it in some way.
Okay, so let me ask about this particular transfer that took place just a few months ago, just prior to when I came on the council. Was they transferred I believe $90,000 was approved to be transferred from the paving project to complete a sidewalk project.
I believe that was a capital improvement. It was funded by capital improvement, which is a different fund from the general fund, but that is part of our CIP fund. It's a different.
But it's included in this budget. This transfers, it has capital improvement.
No, ma'am. The transfers here are just the ones that are affecting the general fund.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, Rox? Not? Go ahead, Rox. Continue.
On the next page, page 64, is the general fund and debt service long range fund budget. This includes the revenue sources for both your M&O and your INS. So I'll be highlighting the budget 24-25 column. So under the M&O, we have a budget for the M&O revenue of $5,990,000, for the INS of $8,676,300, for your total property taxes coming in at $14,666,300. Some of the other revenues that contribute to the revenues is sales tax at $9 million, franchise tax at $2,127,000, and your mixed beverage tax at $88,000, for total taxes of $25,881,300. Your total fines and forfeitures at $469,800. Total charges for services at $637,900. Total license and permits at $541,700. Total intergovernmental at $327,800, and miscellaneous revenue at $1,057,300, for your total operating revenue of $28,915,800. Then we have, under the next section, the transfers in from other funds, and that total transfers in is $10,280,000 for your grand total revenues of $39,195,800. Under your expenses, we have our total operating expenses at $28,737,500. Our total bond expenses at $7,754,200, which this bond expense does include a bond payment for a callable bond for 2012 certificates of obligation. And what we will be doing is we will be paying about $1,390,000 to pay off some debt that we have, rather than making our normal principal and interest payment. We will be making the full payment to clear out this certificate of obligation that we have. So that is included under this $7.7 million. Under total short-term financing, we have $742,300, capital outlay $668,000, and total intergovernmental is $251,900. And our transfers out total $2,088,100. Reserves at $50,000, and debt service expenditures at $893,000. So our total expenses is $41,185,000. This next page, 60.
Roxy, if you can go back for a second, I have a question. So, on the page prior to this, where you were going over the transfers from the general fund, we have a line on there that says economic development, scheduled for $305,800. But on this page down at the bottom, transfers in from the EDC of $200,000. And then on the next page, you have the transfers out, economic development and housing, which is the 305.8.
The $200,000 transfers in to the general fund is the contract agreement we have with Economic Development
Yeah.
Corporation Board. The transfer out of $305,800 is the transfer out to pay for the personnel, supplies and contractual for the Economic Development Director and the Main Street Manager.
Okay, but it says on the third page, economic development and housing. It doesn't say that on page 63. It just says economic development.
Oh, yeah.
And so what exactly is that $305,000 for?
That's to pay for the Economic Development Director, the Main Street Manager positions, as well as any small supplies that they have, general office supplies,
Okay,
paper.
so where does the housing come in on that titles?
I want to say that's just something that's been carrying over.
Yeah, if I can, in years past, we did have a program besides the economic development to provide funding for housing. So we just never changed the title, but it should be economic development.
Okay, so that economic development housing line has nothing to do with the Del Rio Housing Authority.
Correct.
Okay.
So
This is to fund the internal economic development department, not the corporation, but the city department.
Okay.
we'll revise that line item to not show the and housing, so it's not confusing and it's in the same.
Okay, yeah,
same.
I guess I assumed that those employees were just under general fund. So why? Yeah, I didn't think that we would need to transfer out because they're just city employees. You know, they're not.
Yeah, it's under
So-
special revenue.
Yes, special revenue.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Is that it?
For now.
I was on the last page,
Oh, I'm just waiting.
page 66, which shows the operating income or loss under your 24-25 budget. We have a $1,989,200 deficit. Our beginning fund balance under 24-25 is $19,061,323,000. Our ending fund balance is $17,072,123,000. Once we subtract the designated fund balance from bridge fund per city ordinance of $248,448, we have a subtotal of $16,823,675. And then once we include our fund balance requirement of about 5 months, our excess deficit, which is an excess, will have $1,288,675,000. And in there you could see your following year would have an excess of $683,344. In your 26 budget, you'd start dipping into the deficit of $788 and then $1.6 million, and that's assuming that we wouldn't do any property tax rate increases.
I have another question related to the transfer for the bridge fund. So, 23-24, we assumed 280,000, but we actually had to transfer out over 900,000. Am I reading that correct?
Sorry.
And in 22-23, we transferred out 1.4 million.
You're looking at transfers in or transfer out? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at, was that 66? Yeah.
66?
Page
Okay.
66.
Okay.
Designated fund balance from bridge fund per city ordinance, which is $1 per vehicle, correct?
Mhm.
So why are we only budgeting over, approximately $250,000 a year when in 22-23 and 23-24 it was a lot higher than that? So it's per city ordinance unless we change that. We have to do it. So we'll just assume that we're going to do it. I think we know that we're having a few more vehicles than that are going across that we're gonna have to transfer out money for. So we need to budget accordingly, right? And so if we add $700,000 to that, that means that our ending excess is down more in the 5 to 600,000 versus the 1.3 million.
So, if
What
I
am I
can,
missing?
if I can, when you look at the overall general fund balance, it includes uh, a balance that is carried in the bridge fund, which in this case, this was designated back in 1999
Mm-hmm.
that a dollar that was increased in that particular toll increase would go towards this reserves that would help the general fund. So what's happening here, that 1.4, it's basically taking that out, so you can kind of see what actually belongs to the general fund. And in here recently, we've actually been making some payments from that reserve for bridge construction construction projects. So that's why you see that reduced throughout the years. So it isn't the actual bridge fund transfer, which that's on a different page. That's just to take out the amount that belongs to the bridge, but is recorded in the general fund per ordinance, and so that's where hopefully that makes sense to where you actually see the fund balance that belongs to the general fund.
No, that doesn't make sense because that's not what this line says to me. This row says to me that is the number of vehicles, which I think we know 1.4 million didn't cross because we would have had 12-hour lines every day for 24 hours a day. But if that's factored in to what this fund balance is, we need to factor in a realistic number so then we can plan accordingly. Because looking at this, we're like, oh, we have $1.3 million estimated above our 5-month reserve. That sounds really good. But if we have to pull $900,000 out instead of $300,000 out, it's nowhere near as good.
Yes, and I'll have to provide a better presentation so we can kind of follow along as far as what that number really is.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
But it's not a car revenue. Okay, go ahead, Roxy.
That completes the general fund budget presentation. We can go back to any division or department for council questions.
You still have 38 questions, Mayor Pro Tem Cruz?
I think that's about right. How many total open positions do we have? I'm not sure if Mr. Garcia has that number off the top of your head.
Somewhere around 30, sir.
Okay. So both fire chief and both fire and police chiefs are here. You guys are basically full man? Pretty close? How many positions do you have open, Chief Ramirez? Okay. Chief? You only have one. Okay. Because I'm looking at our last city manager update, and under police recruit, it says we have 3 open, if I'm reading this correct. So I was really shocked as I was going, comparing this to what the budget says
Right.
for the number of people.
Yeah, what's on there, it doesn't reflect what's in the positions to be transferred or promoted and whatnot as well. And I think that I got a number wrong on that as well. But there is a difference in positions still to be promoted. I think we got 3 or 4, Chief, I think, pending. Yeah, 4, yes, what I thought. So those aren't listed on that because they're going to be filled from within the ranks. So that's why.
Well,
but that eventually, yes, they will be totaling up to about that amount.
But if we promote from this position to this open position,
Right.
now this position's open, we still have an open position. So it really doesn't matter
Right.
what the rank is.
No, I
right?
understand that.
If we have 18 open positions, we need to do a lot of hiring.
Yes.
So we just need to make sure that the information,
That-
you know, I guess is not only accurate but also clear, because you're an HR professional, you understand this. You understand it a
I
lot better. I just have to read the words,
I understand.
and what the words have told me on multiple things aren't what apparently you take them as,
Yes.
because of your background. So, just need to be clear for the ignorant people such as myself.
No, there's no ignorance here, sir. But you're right. I'm looking at it from my end of the spectrum, if you want to call it that, where it doesn't completely become transparent, I guess you could say. So yeah, but I agree with the chief because those positions are there, but I'm looking at it from I have them on board. I just haven't moved them across. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, sir.
So are they still in the academy, Chief? They still in
No.
training? Is that why?
No. We have vacancies. We have vacancies that need to be filled, and including promotions as well.
Okay. All right.
You have a follow-up question, Councilman?
I have multiple more questions written down, but I know that everyone's dealing with stagnant hypoxia, so
For the record, anytime you all address the podium there, please state your name so that
My apologies. Yes,
because this is recorded, so
Yes,
Mario will see it from Human
HR director.
Resources.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
Councilwoman,
Mr. Garcia,
Yes, ma'am.
just a question to follow up on Councilman DeRue's questions is on the police department. Okay, so as I understand it, you just said you have 4 pending to move in
Right.
to the positions,
Right.
and there will be promotions. But right now there are 18 vacancies.
If you add up all the vacancies, yes, ma'am, 18.
Okay,
Well,
so we
I think actually we're close to 16 with the 2 laterals we brought on or bringing in. Chief.
How you doing? Franklin Amidas, Police Chief. It's good to see you, Council, Mayor. Right now, we were at 21, I believe. I was just updating while I was doing it to make sure, and actually, I think we're down to 14 now. We've got 2 laterals that we hired and 4 that are going into the academy. So we have them, but they haven't gone to the academy yet, so we can't use them. But we actually, assuming everything works out, they make it to the academy. We'll have that 4. And we just lost another one this week. But so we're it just fluctuates right around the 14 to 18 range, back and forth.
Well, I just want to make sure that this budget includes all those positions because I know that y'all will be working diligently to get your department fully staffed.
Yes, ma'am. I believe fully staffed is 70 to 72.
At least to fulfill all the current vacancies. And that's in this current budget, right?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
And then I understand that there's gonna be a civil service contract negotiated this year. So does that budget include, this budget include for them anything also for the fire department?
In the current presentation, it does. But one of my recommendations, since at this point we're about to get to the table to start negotiating with both associations, it doesn't seem like we're get a deal done before September 30th. So it'll be in the next fiscal year. And one recommendation I'm going to make so that we can try and have a balanced budget is exclude that until an agreement is made, and at that time, the administration has to provide a plan for to cover the operating the recurrent expense with real recurrent revenue.
Because we just don't know what that's gonna be at
At
this
this
time.
time, yes, correct.
Correct. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez.
Councilman DeRue, Mayor Pro Tem, you have
I'm good.
24 questions left.
I'm good for now in the interest of time.
Any other questions from any of the presentation from Roxy from the council?
I do. I wanna give everybody else a chance, Mr. Councilman Lopez and everyone else, and then.
You got the floor, Councilwoman Carmen Gutierrez. You got the question.
Yes, I
Roxy's
do.
available.
On the city of Del Rio, the very first one, that presentation, the 24-25 proposed budget, revenue and expense changes for general fund. I was looking for the ARPA funds. Did the city of Del Rio ever apply for the American Rescue Recovery Plan Act that helped fund uh, strategic investments such as for water, wastewater?
Yes, ma'am. We did receive funding in 2022 for about approximately $8 million. And in order to track that, most grants we try and keep them separate from the general fund. Although we do have some in the general fund, it is recorded under its own fund under the special revenue fund. So when we get to the special revenue presentation, you'll see the how we recorded and how we've expensed it.
And if I'm correct, that just the application deadline for additional funding just ended in July.
Okay.
So did the city apply for any additional funding?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am.
Not yet, right, Michael?
Well, it closed in July. And a few observations and comments. As I understand it, there's going to be increases in fees, and possibly other recommendations such as possibly an increase again or doing something with the property tax rate, something to help fund or cover the deficit that we are already established that we had. So, with that being said, I think it's important for the citizens to know, like for example, y'all did a really good job on the individual. I was told I don't talk into the mic. The individual departments, like let's say, I'll pick one here. Finance. Finance has a finance director, one position, assistant finance director, one position. And in most organizations, government entities, for transparency purposes, and I believe the city had this prior to your just immediate past finance director, that the actual salary was posted as to the finance director and the salary so that the citizens would be aware. I believe that that's the way it was previously.
HR, Sharcia.
From apologize. As from what I remember, I want to say we did used to include it, but it wasn't part of any like the GFOA or any GASB requirements, and so that's why we decided to show it as positions because that is what they look for more is our authorized position count versus the salary of a position. So I want to say that's why we had removed it maybe 3-4 years ago.
Well, I look at it also from the citizens' point of view that, we're going to be increasing revenue by increasing taxes of any type, fees of any type, that, they would want to know what the salaries are. And it's open records anyway. And you don't have to say names. But I know that many government entities do it, and I believe it was done in the past. Was it done in the past, or am I mistaken?
You're correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Let me see. I have another note. No, I think that's all my notes. Thank you. Great job, everyone.
Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Ruiz.
I'm good on that presentation for now. I'm ready for the next presentation. Are we discussing the CIP?
No, what I included in your
in our book,
binder.
so
I included the CIP presentation we gave as well as the fixed assets presentation, just for reference that we had done that in the past, and I wasn't planning to discuss the general those presentations, but I will probably have to bring back the CIP presentation for some changes.
Okay, well, we don't need to go through this now, but when you bring it back, on the last page, it doesn't appear to have a page number of the 24-25 one that was done in, what was that, April. There are 17 projects that say anticipated project completion prior to the end of this fiscal year, and I would like an update on those 17 to see how we're doing.
Okay.
So.
And on that, I am planning on bringing a progress report that will show that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
On the 13th.
Hopefully, by the end of August, the second meeting in August.
Any other questions? No?
Not for tonight,
Everybody's cool this side?
unless you really want.
That's it?
I just wanted to express that if you had any other further questions on the general fund, we'd be glad to take them now. We can always bring them up during any other budget workshop. But again, some of the other workshops will concentrate on your other funds and then bringing back the CIP. But if you had any questions, again, I'm open. And if you wanted to reach out to Mr. Chavez and if you have a specific report or item, then we can generate that for you.
Do you have any idea when we're going to have a next budget workshop?
The next council meeting on the 13th, we will be providing the entire budget document, which includes all of the other funds with your general fund. And we should be reviewing the special revenue at workshop, right, before the 6:30 meeting. That's the only fund we will be reviewing for the 13th.
So Mayor, would there be a deadline then for us to submit any feedback to you in order for you to be able to have it ready for next week?
You can do that, or you can stop by her office, and she'll be glad to. And her and
I'd like
Mr.
to do
Chavez
things in
develop.
writing. It's
Cool.
just easier, I think,
Yep.
for y'all.
That works.
Have any other questions or concerns? Roxy, thank you. Linda, thank you. Thank you very much. I guess we'll go ahead and it's 8:12 and this meeting's adjourned.